Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching India's World with me, Frank Rausen Pereira. Under Russia's BRICS chairmanship 2020, President Vladimir Putin will host heads of state of Brazil, China, India and South Africa via video conference on the 17th of November. Initially planned to take place in St. Petersburg in July, it was cancelled due to current coronavirus pandemic. The leaders will discuss the strengthening and further development of cooperation within the framework of BRICS, including in the context of the global political and socio-economic consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic. In addition, the leaders will focus on significant and complicated issues or questions relating to geopolitical to socio-economic spheres, transformations on the global landscapes in the 21st century. Well, as stipulated by the guidelines, Russia took over the rotating presidency of the BRICS from Brazil. Since its establishment, BRICS has come a long way from an informal venue for exchanging views on current issues on the international agenda to an absolutely mature and stable network of multilateral interaction on diverse issues on international and domestic agenda of the 5 BRICS countries. In this edition of India's World, we will analyze what to expect from the BRICS summit. Joining me on the program today are Ashok Sajjanhar, former ambassador, Rajendra Harshe, Foreign Affairs Analyst, and Shakti Sinha, Director, Delhi School of Public Policy and Governance. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of India's World. Ambassador, I'd like to begin the program with you first. Let's analyze what to expect really from the BRICS summit coming up on Monday.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you for having me on your show. I think if we were to ask this question, maybe we also really need to look at where is BRICS coming from? What has it been able to achieve? What are the challenges that it confronts today, and what could possibly be the way forward? So BRICS started in 2001. It was an assessment given by the Goldman Sachs chief economist Jim O'Neill, saying that at that time the 4 countries need to come together. I think that was a time that was a particular time when there was a lot of churning in geopolitics taking place. We had just then had the 9/11 attacks. China had joined the WTO in 2001. Russia was coming out of the 1998 economic crisis, financial crisis, and India also coming out of the sanctions that were imposed on it in the wake of the 1998 nuclear test. So this was the setting, and what Jim O'Neill had at that time said is that these countries will come together, and they will together in terms of their economic prowess, in terms of their economic strength, they will in a few decades be able to get better even than the G7 countries. So after that, we had 2006, when the first time the foreign ministers met on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. 2009, we had the first summit meeting taking place in Russia in Yekaterinburg. And today we are here at the, when the 12th meeting takes place by video conferencing. So BRICS has had a few successes to its credit, notwithstanding the fact that we have had that the countries are so very different. Incidentally, South Africa joined in 2010 and attended the summit in Sanya in China in April 2011. So while these countries are very different, China is seen as the factory of the world. India is seen as the superpower as far as software and computers are concerned. Brazil is the granary of the world. It produces all the wheat, soya, meat, etc. And Russia was seen as the energy hub of the world. So there was a great deal of complementarity as far as these 4 countries are concerned. But going forward, there have been a large number of challenges. Notwithstanding that, the countries have been able to equip themselves reasonably creatively. I think 2 of the biggest achievements are in terms of setting up of the new development bank, or the BRICS Bank, and the currency swap arrangement. Both of these were decided in 2014 at the Fortaleza summit in Brazil. Fortaleza Declaration brings it out. But today, coming here, there are, as you mentioned in your opening remarks, there are a large number of both geo-economic and geopolitical challenges. Economic in terms of the economic downturn as a result of the coronavirus, the COVID-19 itself, the healthcare challenge that it has posed to the whole world, the economic downturn, and also, although it might not be said in so many words, but the aggressiveness and the belligerence of China that we see, which has really turned on its head the existing global political order. So I think these are the challenges. Of course, we have challenge of terrorism. We have challenge of cyber security. We have challenges of connectivity. I think all these are challenges that the leaders, when they get together in the online format, that this is what they will have to discuss and try to find a way forward.
Absolutely. All right. So, Mr. Sinha, let me bring you in now. Like the ambassador very beautifully put it, very diverse set of countries, with diverse strengths. So what are the common goals really as far as the BRICS nations are concerned?
It's very interesting that when Ashok was giving the details, and my mind actually went back to December 1998, when Yevgeny Primakov, the then Russian acting prime minister, was in Delhi, and he proposed RIC, Russia, India, China, to come together. But that idea did not sell then because China did not want to be seen as doing anything that would upset America. From there to a stage now, when actually the strategic viewpoints of all of these countries, many of them are significantly different. If you look at the rise of China in our neighborhood, its threat to the sovereignty of countries, including India and countries of ASEAN. If you look at the fact that Russia is trying to play some kind of a role in between India and China to bring about greater convergence so that the Americans don't step in. On the other hand, the Indians are far more comfortable with the Americans than with the others. South Africa, unfortunately, has globally not emerged in the way we thought it would emerge when it was brought in. And Brazil, again, decidedly pro-America at this stage. So at this stage, these five countries, or the four main players actually, the original BRIC, they have significantly amounts of strategic divergences. And I think the effort in Russia by Vladimir Putin is clearly how do you reduce these divergences, because Russia sees any American influence in this area as contrary to its own interests. And there Russia and China have a greater strategic convergence than with the others. So I think it's at BRICS is a very important stage, and yet at a stage where a lot of people have not really given it a serious thought. The fact that in the last 1 week, the Indian media has talked about everything else other than the BRICS summit. The ASEAN summit yesterday has drawn a lot of attention, but not the, which means that there is a certain amount of skepticism coming in. Will this platform deliver because of the strategic divergences that the main countries have? So that, I think, is where a very serious challenge lies for BRICS.
Absolutely. All right. So, Professor Harshay, as far as BRICS is concerned and as far as this summit is concerned, what do you think is going to be big on the agenda? What are the key focus areas going to be?
I would like to kind of, endorse what my previous speaker spoke. I give one footnote also. I was myself a member of Indo-Russian Joint Commission for Social Sciences for 6 years. And what Shakti is saying, we tried to bring China, Russia and India together in those days and work out research in areas where things are possible. And Moscow Academy was with us, but it didn't materialize. So far as the BRICS are concerned, I would kind of supplement number of things, Ashok, in different way. To me, what happens in the rise of such organization, in my view, is surely somewhere a rise of a challenge to the erstwhile Anglo-American based rule of law or international law, which was functioning all the time. And that order is being questioned because there are a number of parties in international relations like Russia, Brazil, China, India, South Africa, who want their legitimate place in world politics. And that we cannot forget. So they would like to have important position in the United Nations. Russia and China already have, but why not India? Why not South Africa? Why not Brazil? So somewhere is a change in the constitution and world order of different international organizations like WTO, United Nations, IMF, the World Bank. And this I say with some kind of empirical basis, because if you see, 42% of the population belongs to all these countries, or something like 16% of the world trade is from here, or something like $18.6 trillion economy comes from here. As Ashok was highlighting that there are diversities, I also agree with him completely. But that they can be also to our advantage if we decide to work constructively. Like Russian population is aging, India is youngest of the population. The complementaries can be worked out in several ways. We are ICT power. Somewhere in digital world, all of them are struggling to do something. China is slightly ahead, but India is trying to work through, Russia is trying to work through. There are many areas. Now, when you're asking me about areas where it can work, I think currently kind of the focus is on security. And we cannot avoid the idea of security when we're thinking of BRICS. As far as the NDB, New Development Bank, it is functioning with $100 billion. Other organizations like infrastructural development, there is enthusiasm for it. But security is something so common, and what the essential part of the security is not just geopolitical security, perhaps, which Ashok was slightly hinting at, but there is something like non-state actors or somewhere jihadi terrorists who are playing havoc in different parts of the world and disturbing security in different parts of the world. And that could be moderation of BRICS also, because if you look at politics in West Asia, Russia is involved in Syria as much as in North African country like Libya. America is, of course, involved in West Asia for long. China is also befriending Iran. India wants to have something. So there are so many problems related to security, and that would be at the center. And Prime Minister Modi has consistently talked about counter-terror in the last summit also, and Bolsonaro has said it. So this will be the central issue. The rest, like climate change, like infrastructural development, they will follow. This is what I would say.
All right. So 2 C's I'm going to take forward with you, Ambassador. Complementarities and challenges. So do you believe that the complementarities outweigh the challenges, first and foremost, as far as BRICS is concerned? And then with everything that's been going on the border and in the Indo-Pacific, as far as India and China are concerned, will it in some way hamper or hurt progress in multilateral organizations like the BRICS?
Excellent questions, Frank, and let me try to respond to that. When you talk about complementarities and challenges, what will really take precedence? I would refer to what Shakti mentioned, the first time that Primakov referred to the RIC concept in 1998. I was in Moscow at that time, and I remember I had come to see off because I was the charge in Moscow, and I had come to see off Primakov. It was a cold, wintry morning. And Primakov was talking about this RIC even when he was boarding the aircraft. But at that time, of course, we were talking about politics. What BRICS really represented, or rather BRIC really represented to start with, was economics. It was not politics. What it said was, it is the financial. It is to give greater heft. It is to give greater voice to the developing world. Because all these different financial institutions, IMF, World Bank, etc., they are dominated by the West, by Europe, by USA and the others. And the idea was that this should be a forum where developing countries come together and are able to have their say. Now, if you look at it, what was the situation? And, Rajan has put it very nicely, that today, these 4 or 5 countries account for about 33% of the world GDP in purchasing power parity terms. I'm not talking about the nominal dollar terms. Nominal dollar terms, it's still about 23 odd percent. But in purchasing power parity, it is about 33%. So this is huge. And these countries are growing. Unfortunately, Russia and Brazil have not really been able to live up to the task. And their economies and their share in the global GDP has been coming down, while that of India and China has been growing. For instance, if you look at China over the last 20 years, it has grown by about 900%, in terms of its GDP. India has grown by about 480%. So I think there is a very rapid growth as far as these two economies are concerned. Now, in terms of complementarities, there are complementarities between, for instance, Russia and India. These are strategic partners, and across the board, we have complementarities. There are complementarities that India, South Africa, and Brazil have. After all, they are members of IPSA. So, of course, IPSA has not had a summit meeting for quite some time, but these are democracies, so they have great complementarities. On the other hand, Brazil has problems with China, but of course, it will like to keep good relations because China is a huge market for its agricultural products. Russia and China, of course, have a strategic partnership. If you look at geopolitically, three of these countries, Frank, so far have not sent even words of congratulation to the new leader of the United States. Neither China, nor Russia, nor Brazil. So I will not say that Brazil does not have good relations. Bolsonaro has had excellent relations with Trump, but not with Biden. So the point I'm making is that there is a lot of churning that is taking place globally. And there are a lot of challenges that the countries have to confront. Now, coming to the second point that you made, as far as China and India and the Ladakh confrontation and the aggression. Now, the aggression that China has done against India, it's not only against India. China has been flexing its muscles. China has been aggressive. China has been belligerent against so many other countries. Not only in the South China Sea, but you look at its wolf warrior diplomacy, look at its mask diplomacy, look at the manner in which it tries to weaponize its supply chains by denying whether it is rare earth minerals or other items which are required by the other countries. So I think the responsibility for an efficient and a productive functioning of BRICS, as also of many other regional or multilateral organizations, in my view, rests squarely with China. If China is able to deal with it properly and to contain its own ambitions and aspirations to be the preeminent power in the world, I think we can see some hope for BRICS, SCO, and some of the other organizations.
Absolutely. Right. All right. So, Mr. Sinha, so since the ambassador brought up this issue of the US president-elect, now let's talk about that. Clearly, bilaterally, of course, the relationships are it's going to have some kind of a bearing on the bilateral relationships with the United States. But as far as multilaterals are concerned, like the BRICS or any, the SCO or any other multilateral organization, do you believe that a change of guard in the United States is going to have any bearing on these multilateral organizations?
That's a very good one. The biggest multilateral organization in trouble today is actually the WTO. And there, the US attitude to the WTO. The WTO is effectively non-functional now because the dispute settlement mechanism appellate body is now headless. And therefore, if I lose a case, I'll say I'll wait for the appeal, and the appeal will never take place. And that is a consistent and a very conscious policy of the last US administration. Or the present one is still continuing. And therefore, a change of guard in the United States and a desire to work with other countries, whether the new DG will be allowed to really take charge of WTO and Ngozi Iweala for that matter. So I think that's very significant that the US elections would have a bearing on this. Would it have a bearing on the BRICS and SCO directly? Not directly in that sense, but indirectly on issues like climate change. Now, one issue when India and China still are largely together is, say, on the issue of climate change. Now, whether if the US's re-engagement with the Paris process, the Paris Climate Agreement, moves forward, then again, these countries can work together and develop platforms for cooperation, leaving their tensions on other issues aside. But I think the greatest, and I'll come back to where I started from, is trade. Now, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or whatever the new name is in force. Biden will not join it. Let's be very clear. America under Trump, America under Biden will still not join it. But with RCEP coming into force without India and with the WTO on a logjam, I think it is there that the US administration's role will be absolutely essential, because if World Trade does not sort out its problems, trade has been a very large driver of economic growth of all our countries. Today, trade as a percent of GDP is higher in India than it is in China. So China is a factory of the world and the largest importer of the world. And I think that is where we would really fervently hope that the incoming US administration is able to make a difference to WTO, maybe to WHO under a new leadership. So there are platforms of cooperation where the USA is very, very important. Trade, health, climate change to begin with. But obviously cybersecurity and other issues, yes.
Right, all right. So, Professor, as far as multilateral organizations are concerned, considering what the world is going through, with the pandemic, considering that we are going through a slowdown as far as the economy is concerned, and looking at the belligerence of China, what does all of this mean for multilateral organizations?
I'll tell you one thing very interestingly. That multilateralism is very important. And so far as COVID is concerned, in some way it has actually triggered the functioning of multilateral organizations better. Otherwise, it wouldn't have, because all of us are united by crisis. And we're thinking about vaccine together, thinking about helping each other out together. China is vehemently denying the fact that it had any role in it. And Indians are also willing to cooperate with China. Now, what I feel is multilateral organization also has within themselves bilateral ties, which Ashok was trying to highlight. And take, for example, China and India over Ladakh. China is fighting with every neighbor, Philippines, Vietnam, anywhere where they go, they fight. But the point is, you can also show the areas of difference you can keep aside for some time, and areas of cooperation can be given importance and weightage, and that is possible. And that's where you can cooperate. And what are those? Each country will have areas of differences and convergences. And how every time India works out very diligently what is converging. Like Russia, there are so many things converging, not just arms that we buy from Russia, but Russia can be great market. Russia can be kind of a place where so many students can be sent, or their students can come here. Many ways we can work out. South Africa, for example, is so minerally rich. And India requires uranium, platinum, diamond, gold, everything that South Africa possesses. I think bilateral relations also need to be worked out individually and multilaterally. And somewhere you can then have consensus on how that cooperation and plan will work. As far as India is concerned, it has always had somewhere accommodative spirit whenever it goes into different conferences. It understand that rivalry and coexistence can go together, and with that you can serve your agenda. I think Indians know how to live with basically conflict, which others don't know so well. Like communist countries, for example, can't live with other point of view conflict. Putin or Xi Jinping may be uneasy, but Prime Minister Modi used to conflict and used to meeting opponents every other day and also countering, and they counter it. That's how we function. So that will kind of, suppose consensus is built on many areas, like how to spend the funds related to development bank, how to stimulate trade, how to work out, fights against COVID, how to contain. I think we'll move further. And it is possible in a multilateral organization. That's why they are meant for. Yeah. There is also one common agenda which I would like to insist, that somewhere all these countries at one level are not, they want to keep role of America and keep it in a minimized way. Although India is slightly friendlier to America, but that is a reality because America dominated world order. Now many other countries which are emerging are tired about. That's what I want to say.
Okay, time to get quick closing comments from all my panelists. Limited time, so I'm going to ask you to be brief with the best way forward, starting first with the Ambassador.
Well, I think basically what we need to do, as Prime Minister Modi has also mentioned, that multilateralism is in crisis, and we've seen that. COVID has brought that out. Rajan says that it has brought out the multilateral spirits in the world. I have a slightly different opinion. I think multilateralism has truly failed as far as COVID-19 is concerned. When countries should have come out to help each other, they have really withdrawn. They have become sort of, everyone is looking at itself as to how it can deal with it. I agree that India is in a very ideal place, very well suited. Rajan mentions that, India deals with conflicts. I would say, instead of conflicts, contradictions. I think the whole Indian society is based on contradictions. And so we are very much at home with contradictions. So in that sense, even as far as foreign policy goes, We say, multi-alignment or issue-based alignment. So we can align with a large number of countries. Just to give one example at the end, is on the two sidelines of the two G20 summits last year in Osaka and in 2018 in Rio. India had RIC meetings, summit meetings with Xi and Putin. India also had meetings with Japan and America. So you had RIC as well as JAI. So,
Right.
this is the outreach and the comfort level that India has. And I think India, with its role in as non-permanent member of the UN Security Council, can really take this forward as to how multilaterally we can continue to build together.
Absolutely. Mr. Sinha.
A lot of platforms have been created. BRICS is one of them. SCO is another one. And I think going forward, the amount of resources one can put to them is limited. And therefore, I would feel that if we want to make an institution or a platform like BRICS successful, you would have to hone in on what are the key deliverables that it can give and drop the others out of the thing. Russia has talked about this BRICS summit as leading to better quality of life. I think that's a long shot. There are issues of climate change. There are issues of terrorism. There are other issues where these countries can and should work together. But if you load too much on the agenda on them, then I think they turn out to be a disappointment. It's better to be realistic, look for the way ahead, understanding, and all of us have agreed on that, understanding that while we are coming to contradictions, many others are not. They see the word in binary terms. How do you move to a situation where we agree to disagree and work together on other issues? That,
Absolutely.
I think, is the key way forward.
Very true. Professor, close the show for us with your quick concluding remark.
What Ashok says, I agree with our contradictions as well as conflict. Both the things are right. India deals with conflicts as well as contradictions, I feel. And another thing is, there is a kind of greater resilience in India than many countries I have seen. So I personally feel that any multilateral forum, if it has to work, I think India can become also important catalyst in organizing it, supporting it. And there's one important point which I forgot to mention, that all these countries, the memberships of international organizations overlap. They're members of G20, SCO, ASEAN also some of them. And that can also work, inputs can come from several other organizations to see how we can see future together. As far as COVID is concerned, partly what Ashok says is right, that people have tendency to withdraw, be selfish. And it's also true that they want to be giving, because we're watching and monitoring each other's kind of performance in terms of containing COVID. But I feel that there is a possibility, only thing is public opinion has to be built around all this. Otherwise, in democracy, there's no meaning. Thanks a lot.
Okay, all right. On that note, then I'll call it a wrap on this edition of India's World. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. What's coming out of this discussion is that if you have to ensure that the BRICS summit or the BRICS as an organization needs to be successful, we have to work out some key deliverables. Everyone has to be realistic. We need to focus, of course, on these issues of terror, cyber security, and climate change. But it's always good to have some well-focused areas and some well-focused and realistic targets. As far as challenges are concerned, there are several geo-economic as well as geopolitical challenges. The geo-economic challenge posed, of course, by the pandemic, geopolitical posed by a belligerent China. These are some aspects that need to be worked out. We need to sort out the kind of strategic divergence that has appeared over the last few years. Areas of cooperation should be given importance, and we should complement each other rather than focus on the areas of divergence. India has learnt how to live with conflict and focus on areas of consensus. The same has to be done by the other countries as well. With that, it's a wrap. See you again next time.